Robert, what on earth happened? Look at you!
I can't, not right now, Carol. I just need a minute. I swear to you, Marie, I didn't know the extent of it until today.
They are coming for us. Don't open it, please.
What are you doing? Who is it?
My God, is that really you?
Yes. Please, let me explain.
My husband came through the back door just after midnight, his expensive winter coat streaked with mud and his hands trembling. "Richard, where have you been?" I asked. He stared at me as though 41 years of marriage had vanished between us. "Nobody knows the truth, Cheryl," he whispered. "And after tonight, nobody ever will." Before I could demand an explanation, the doorbell rang. Richard's face went completely white. "Don't open it." It was the third time someone had come to our door that week, and the third time my husband had lied about who it was. Through the frosted glass, I saw an older woman clutching a faded photograph. My hand closed around the doorknob. "If you open that door," Richard said, "our family will never be the same." Before I tell you what happened next, please like this video and subscribe if you believe the truth always finds its way home. Tell me in the comments, would you have opened that door? And where are you watching from? And what time is it there? I used to believe that if you stayed married long enough, you eventually knew everything about the person sleeping beside you. Now I know that isn't always true. My name is Cheryl Murphy. I'm 67 years old, and until that winter, I believed I had lived an ordinary life. For 32 years, I worked as an elementary school librarian in a public school outside Columbus, Ohio. My life was filled with children's laughter storybooks and quiet afternoons helping nervous readers discover their confidence. I retired 3 years ago. Richard retired shortly after me. He had spent nearly 4 decades as a hospital administrator. Everyone respected him. Neighbors waved whenever he drove past. Former coworkers still called him for advice. At church, people thanked him for helping their families during difficult medical situations. If someone had asked me to describe my husband, I would have used words like dependable, patient, responsible, never mysterious, never frightening. We had been married for 41 years. 41 years. That's a long time to trust someone. Our daughter, Allison Parker, lived only 15 minutes away. She worked long shifts as a registered nurse while raising her 16-year-old son, Ryan, after her divorce. She was strong, much stronger than she realized. Our son, Brandon Murphy, lived in Chicago. He had built a successful career as a financial advisor and always admired his father. Richard was his hero. If Brandon had a difficult decision, he called his dad before anyone else. Looking back now, I wonder how many conversations happened without me knowing. How many secrets passed between father and son while I sat only a few feet away. For most of our marriage, Richard was an open book, or at least I believed he was. He left his wallet on the kitchen counter. His phone stayed on the coffee table. He never cared if I answered it. Then, about 6 months before that night, everything changed. It began so quietly that I almost ignored it. Richard started taking evening drives. At first he claimed he couldn't sleep. "I just need fresh air," he told me. That sounded reasonable. Retirement can be difficult. People lose routines. They search for purpose. I believed him. But the drives became longer. Then they became more frequent. Sometimes he left after dinner. Sometimes after midnight. He always returned looking exhausted. One evening, I asked, "Where do you keep going?" He smiled without looking at me. "Just driving." That answer should have satisfied me. Instead, it left me feeling strangely empty. Then came the phone calls. His cell phone would ring. He'd glance at the screen, stand up immediately, walk outside, close the door behind him. When he returned, he always smiled too quickly. Wrong number. Every time. How many wrong numbers can one man receive? Soon I noticed another habit. Richard started locking the top drawer of his desk. For 41 years, that drawer had never been locked. One afternoon, I needed a stamp. That's where we always kept them. The drawer wouldn't open. I called toward the living room. "Richard, where are the stamps?" He answered almost instantly. "I moved them." "Where?" "I'll get one." He came into the room so quickly that it startled me. Instead of telling me where the stamps were, he opened another drawer, handed me one, then quietly locked the first drawer again. I watched him. He realized I was watching. Neither of us spoke. That silence stayed with me for days. Then he began checking the front window constantly. We could be watching television. Halfway through a movie, he'd suddenly stand up, pull back the curtain, look outside, then sit down again. At first, I laughed. "What are you looking for?" He shrugged. "Nothing." But nobody checks for nothing. I knew that. Women my age notice small things. We've spent decades reading expressions our husbands don't even know they're making. We know when they're worried. We know when they're pretending. Richard was pretending. Then came the first doorbell. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Richard had gone to a hardware store. I was folding laundry upstairs when I heard the bell. When I reached the front door, I saw an older woman standing on the porch. She looked about my age, maybe a little younger. She wore a dark blue coat despite the unusually warm afternoon. Her shoulders were slumped. She wasn't angry. She looked heartbroken. In one hand, she held a faded photograph. The other hand clutched an old manila envelope. When she noticed movement behind the curtain, our eyes met. For only a second. There was something familiar in the sadness on her face. I reached for the lock. Before I could open the door, she turned around. She walked slowly toward an older silver sedan parked across the street. She never looked back. When Richard returned home, I mentioned it casually. "A woman came looking for you." He froze. Only for an instant. But I saw it. "What woman?" "I don't know. Around our age." "She had a photograph." He looked toward the front window, then back at me. "You probably misunderstood." "I don't think so. Maybe she had the wrong address." He answered too quickly. Not once did he ask what she looked like. Not once did he ask what she wanted. Not once did he ask if she left a name. It was as if he already knew. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m, I walked downstairs for a glass of water. The living room fireplace was still glowing. Richard was kneeling beside it. He didn't hear me. He was feeding papers into the fire. One sheet slipped from his hand before reaching the flames. It landed beside the fireplace. Richard immediately picked it up. Too late. I had already seen it. A cream-colored envelope. Old, creased, with handwriting instead of a printed label. He shoved it into the fire. I pretended I hadn't noticed. The next morning, after Richard left to buy groceries, I cleaned the fireplace. Most of the papers had burned completely, but one corner of that envelope survived. Only a small piece. Barely larger than a postage stamp. Just enough to read 2 words. Patricia Bennett. I stared at that name for a long time. It meant nothing to me. Yet somehow, I knew it would change everything. That afternoon, I searched every Christmas card, birthday card, and address book we owned. No Patricia Bennett, no Bennett family, no explanation. Only questions. Questions my husband clearly didn't want me asking. And for the first time in 41 years, I wondered whether I had ever truly known the man I married. For the next 3 days, I said nothing. I smiled when Richard looked at me. I poured his coffee every morning. I kissed him goodbye when he left the house. But inside, I had stopped believing him. People often say, trust disappears all at once. That isn't true. Trust disappears quietly. It leaves one unanswered question at a time. The name Patricia Bennett stayed in my mind like a song I couldn't stop hearing. I wanted to confront Richard. Instead, I decided to watch him. After 41 years of marriage, I knew his routines better than my own, which meant I knew exactly when they changed. The first thing I noticed was the cash. Richard had always paid with his credit card. Always. He liked collecting reward points. He even joked that one day they'd pay for a vacation to Alaska. But suddenly, he began visiting our bank every Thursday morning. The first week, he withdrew $2,000. The next week, $4,500. The week after that, $7,000. Cash. No explanation. When I casually asked what he needed that much money for, he barely looked up from the newspaper. Just taking care of a few things. What things? Nothing you need to worry about. Nothing. That word again. Nothing. It seemed to be his favorite lie. A few days later, I found him standing at the living room window before sunrise. The coffee maker hadn't even finished brewing. He pulled the curtain back only an inch. He looked toward the street, then toward the mailbox, then across to our neighbor's house. When I walked into the room, he let the curtain fall immediately. "You couldn't sleep?" I asked. "I heard a car." "There isn't one." "I thought I heard one." His voice sounded calm. His eyes didn't. I started noticing other little things. Every time a vehicle slowed near our house, Richard stopped whatever he was doing. Every delivery truck, every garbage truck, every unfamiliar car. It was as if he expected someone to arrive. Or feared they would. One afternoon, I decided to test him. I folded laundry while he watched television. Without looking at him, I said, "I keep thinking about that woman who came to the house." Silence. Long enough to make me look up. Richard had muted the television. "What woman?" "The one carrying the photograph." He forced a smile. "You still thinking about that?" "I just wondered if she ever came back." He shook his head. "You worry too much." Then he stood up and left the room. Not because the conversation was over. Because he couldn't stay in it. That Sunday, Allison came over for dinner with Ryan. Sunday dinners had been our family tradition for years. Brandon lived in Chicago, so he joined us only on holidays, but Allison rarely missed a Sunday. She brought homemade apple pie. Ryan carried a board game under one arm. For a little while, everything felt normal again. Richard laughed. Ryan joked about school. Allison teased me for making enough mashed potatoes to feed 20 people. I almost convinced myself I had imagined everything. Then dinner was served. Richard barely touched his food. He kept checking his phone, every few minutes. His fork rested untouched beside his plate. "Everything okay, Dad?" Allison asked. "I'm just tired." Ryan smiled. "Grandpa, if you're tired, I can beat you at Monopoly tonight." Richard forced a laugh. "You probably could." Then Ryan reached toward the chair beside Richard. His leather briefcase rested there. "I'll move this so we have more room." "No!" Richard's voice exploded across the dining room. Everyone froze. Ryan pulled his hand back immediately. "I'm sorry." Richard looked horrified. Not at Ryan. At himself. He cleared his throat. "I just have important paperwork inside." Ryan nodded quietly. "No problem." The conversation never recovered. Dinner ended early. After Allison and Ryan left, Richard carried the briefcase upstairs. Later that evening, he went outside to take another phone call. For some reason, he forgot the briefcase. It sat beside his desk, unlocked. I stared at it for almost a full minute. Then I opened it. Inside were neatly organized folders, financial documents, hospital paperwork, retirement statements, nothing unusual, until I reached the bottom. There, folded inside a clear plastic sleeve, was an old newspaper clipping, yellow with age. The headline immediately caught my attention. Local woman killed in hit and run. Below it was a photograph. A smiling young woman, 26 years old. Linda Bennett, married only 8 months, expecting her first child. Killed during a snowstorm 34 years earlier. The article explained that the driver had fled before emergency crews arrived. Police believed the vehicle was a dark blue American sedan. No arrest had ever been made. The case eventually went cold. My hands started shaking. Why would Richard keep this? Why preserve a newspaper clipping about a woman he supposedly didn't know? I continued reading. One sentence stopped me cold. The accident happened on Mill Creek Road. I whispered the words aloud. Mill Creek Road. A memory surfaced immediately. Years ago, Richard had taken me there during one of our anniversaries. He smiled as we stood overlooking the frozen creek. This is where I knew I wanted to marry you? I had believed him. I remembered laughing, holding his hand, kissing him beneath bare winter trees. Now that same road carried another memory. Linda Bennett died there. I heard the front door close downstairs. Richard was back. I quickly slid the clipping into the folder. Too late. He walked into the office. Our eyes met. Neither of us spoke. Then he looked at the open briefcase. His face changed instantly. What are you doing? His voice was cold. I was looking for a pen. In my briefcase. I swallowed. I saw the newspaper. He crossed the room, took the clipping from my hand, folded it carefully. You shouldn't go through my things. I wasn't trying to. Then don't. His words weren't loud. They were worse. Controlled. Measured. Like someone struggling to hide anger. I pointed at the article. Who was Linda Bennett? No one you knew. Did you know her? It was an old hospital matter. What kind of hospital matter ends with someone dead? Richard looked away. You wouldn't understand. Then help me understand. He placed the clipping back inside the folder, closed the briefcase, locked it. There was a legal investigation years ago. About a hit and run. It involved the hospital. How? It just did. Every answer created 2 more questions. I stood in front of the office door. Richard? He finally looked at me. His eyes were tired, not guilty, terrified. I know you were on Mill Creek Road. He didn't move. You told me that's where you proposed. Still nothing. Was that true? A long silence filled the room. Finally, he answered. Yes. Were you there the night Linda Bennett died? He stared directly into my eyes. For one impossible moment, I believed he was finally going to tell me everything. Instead, he picked up the briefcase, walked past me, and quietly said, Some memories are better left buried. Then he closed the bedroom door behind him. I remained standing in the hallway, listening, waiting, realizing that for the first time in our marriage, Richard hadn't denied it. He never answered my question. And somehow, his silence terrified me more than any confession could have. That night, I didn't sleep. Richard lay beside me, breathing slowly as if nothing had happened. I stared at the ceiling until dawn. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the newspaper clipping. Linda Bennett, 26 years old, pregnant, killed on Mill Creek Road, and my husband refusing to answer the simplest question I had ever asked him. "Were you there?" Silence. Sometimes silence tells the truth faster than words. At 7 the next morning, Richard kissed my forehead before leaving for breakfast with a former coworker. At least, that's what he said. The moment his car disappeared down the street, I grabbed my purse. For 32 years, I had worked at Franklin Elementary School. Before that, I had spent almost a decade volunteering at the Columbus Public Library. People there still knew me. If anyone could help me find old newspaper records, it was them. The library hadn't changed much. The same brick walls, the same smell of old paper, the same quiet voices floating between shelves. When I walked inside, I heard someone call my name. Cheryl. I turned around. It was Martha Collins. She had worked in the archives department for years. She smiled and hugged me. "I haven't seen you in forever." "I need a favor." She looked at my face for only a second. Then her smile faded. "Come with me." She led me downstairs into the archive room. Boxes of newspapers filled the shelves from floor to ceiling. "What are you looking for?" I hesitated. "A car accident." "What year?" 34 years ago." She typed into the archive database. "What name?" "Linda Bennett." Within seconds, dozens of newspaper records appeared. Martha printed several of them. "I'll leave you alone." "Thank you." She squeezed my shoulder before walking away. I began reading. The first article was almost identical to the clipping Richard kept. The second article contained more details. Linda Bennett had worked in the billing department of St. Andrew Regional Hospital, the same hospital where Richard worked. My heartbeat quickened. The article explained that Linda had left the hospital's annual Christmas party shortly after 10 that evening. She never arrived home. Her body wasn't discovered until early the next morning because heavy snow had covered much of the roadside. Police believed the driver fled immediately after the collision. No witnesses identified the vehicle. I kept reading. The third article caught my attention. Investigators believed the victim had been moved. I read the sentence 3 times. Moved. According to the report, Linda's injuries and the location of broken glass suggested the impact happened several yards away from where her body was found. At the time, investigators couldn't explain why. The case eventually went cold. I leaned back in my chair. Why would someone move her? My eyes drifted toward another paragraph. Police were searching for a dark blue sedan with front-end damage. Dark blue. I suddenly remembered our first family car, a dark blue Ford sedan. Richard loved that car. He washed it every Saturday morning, until one winter, then it vanished. I closed my eyes. A memory returned so clearly that it felt like I was living it again. I was 28 years old, 7 months pregnant with Brandon. It had snowed heavily all afternoon. Richard didn't come home after work. Midnight passed, then 1 o'clock. I remember standing by the front window. Night passed, then 1 o'clock. I remember standing by the front window worried sick. Finally, headlights appeared. Richard stepped out of the car, or what was left of it. The front bumper was crushed. One headlight hung loose. His coat was soaked. His face looked gray. I rushed outside. "Oh my God, Richard!" He looked at me without speaking. "What happened?" "I hit a deer." "A deer?" It ran into the road. I looked toward the damaged hood. There was something dark near the front fender. Mud. At least that's what I thought. Richard noticed me staring. He quickly wiped it away with his sleeve. "I'm okay," he said. "That's all that matters." The next morning, the car disappeared. I asked where it went. "I sold it." So quickly. It wasn't worth repairing. I never questioned him again. Not once. Back then, I trusted him more than I trusted my own instincts. Sitting in that archive room, I realized something else. The accident happened the same week Richard sold the car. How had I never connected those two memories? Because I had never been given a reason to. Until now. I continued reading. One final article described Linda herself. She wasn't just another victim. She had recently married her high school sweetheart. She loved gardening. She volunteered at a local animal shelter. And she was expecting her first baby. I stopped reading. I couldn't breathe for a moment. A young woman, a young mother, a family that never had the chance to exist. I folded the newspaper carefully. As I gathered the copies, Martha returned. "Did you find what you needed?" "I'm not sure." She studied me. "Cheryl, are you okay?" I almost told her everything. Instead, I smiled. "I'll be fine." But I wasn't. The drive home felt longer than usual. Every stoplight gave me another chance to think. Every mile made one question louder. If Richard really hit a deer, why did every piece of this story point somewhere else? When I pulled into the driveway, Richard's car was already there. That surprised me. He wasn't supposed to be home. I walked inside quietly. The house was completely dark. Only the living room lamp was on. Richard sat alone in his recliner. He wasn't reading. He wasn't watching television. He was waiting. "You were gone a long time," he said. "So were you." I canceled breakfast. His eyes dropped to the folder in my hands. "What did you find?" The question froze me. I didn't say I was looking for anything. "You went to the library." My heart skipped. "How do you know that—" I called the house. "I wasn't home. You weren't at the grocery store either." He stood slowly. "Cheryl, you followed me?" "No." "Then how did you know where I went?" He didn't answer. Instead, he looked at the papers under my arm. "You found the archive." I said nothing. He already knew. "I told you to leave the past alone." "You never told me there was a past." His shoulders dropped. For the first time, he looked old. Much older than 69. "I was trying to protect you." "From what?" He looked toward the window, then back at me. "If you keep digging," his voice cracked, "you won't only destroy me." He paused. "You'll destroy Allison." I frowned. "Our daughter has nothing to do with this." "And Brandon." "They weren't even born." "I know." "Then what are you talking about?" He walked closer, close enough that I could see fear in his eyes. Real fear, not anger, not embarrassment. Fear. "There are things you don't understand." "Then explain them." "I can't." "You can?" "I won't." I held up one of the newspaper copies. "Were you on Mill Creek Road that night?" He stared at the paper, then at me. Seconds passed, maybe a full minute. Finally, he whispered, "Yes." One word, only one, but it changed everything. I waited for the rest, for the explanation, for the denial, for anything. Nothing came. He turned away, walked toward the hallway. Before disappearing around the corner, he stopped without looking back. "If you love this family," his voice was almost too quiet to hear, "stop asking questions." Then he disappeared into his office. The door locked behind him. I stood alone in the living room, holding the newspapers, listening to the click of that lock, and realizing my husband had finally admitted something. He had been there, not somewhere nearby, not in another town, not at home, on the same road, the same night, where a young pregnant woman died. And suddenly, I wasn't trying to prove Richard was lying anymore. I was trying to discover how much of our entire marriage had been built on that single winter night. The next morning, Richard acted as if nothing had happened. He poured orange juice into 2 glasses. He buttered my toast. He even asked if I wanted to drive to the farmer's market that weekend. 41 years together had taught him how to pretend. 41 years together had taught me when he was pretending. I didn't answer his question. Instead, I looked across the kitchen table and asked one of my own. "Who was Dr. Robert Hayes?" The knife stopped halfway across his toast, only for a second. Then he continued spreading butter. "Where did you hear that name?" "I found it in the newspaper archives." He sighed. "I hoped you wouldn't. So you know him." "I knew him." The past tense mattered. I folded my hands together. "Tell me the truth, Richard." He looked at me for a long time. Finally, he stood. "Come with me." He walked into the living room. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. The silence felt heavier than shouting. Richard sat down slowly. He looked older than I had ever seen him. "I've carried this for 34 years. "Then stop carrying it alone." He rubbed both hands together. "It wasn't supposed to happen." "What wasn't?" "The accident." I didn't interrupt. For the first time since this nightmare had begun, Richard wasn't avoiding the conversation. He was choosing his words carefully. "I wasn't driving." The sentence came out almost as a whisper. I searched his face. "No." He shook his head. "Robert Hayes was." I didn't react. I simply waited. "He was a young surgeon back then, brilliant, confident. Everyone believed he'd become chief of surgery one day." Richard leaned back. "We attended the hospital Christmas party together." "You both left at the same time?" "Almost." "Had he been drinking?" Richard closed his eyes. "Too much." I felt my stomach tighten. "He shouldn't have been driving." "I know. So why was he—" Richard didn't answer immediately. He insisted he was fine. "And you let him—" "He was my friend." The room became quiet again. Richard continued. "About 20 minutes later, he called me." His voice began to shake. I could barely understand him. "What did he say?" He kept repeating, "I hit someone." My heartbeat echoed inside my ears. "He told me where he was." "Mill Creek Road." Richard nodded. "I drove there." "What did you find?" He stared at the floor. "Linda." He finally said her name. Not the woman, not the victim. "Linda. Was she alive?" He hesitated. "I don't know." I watched every expression on his face. Something wasn't right. "You don't know." "It was snowing." "Richard." "It was dark." "Richard." I couldn't tell. I leaned forward. What happened next? He swallowed hard. Robert was panicking. He wanted to call 911. Richard looked away. No. He wanted to leave. Yes. I felt anger rising inside me. And what did you do? I told him we couldn't leave. Relief washed over me. For one brief second. Then Richard kept talking. But Robert said if anyone discovered he was drunk, he'd lose everything. Richard nodded. He had 2 young children. And Linda had a baby on the way. The words escaped my mouth before I could stop them. Richard lowered his head. I know. No, you didn't know. I stood up. If you had known, you would have called for help. I panicked. So you left. His silence answered me. I walked toward the window. Outside, our neighborhood looked exactly as it always had. Children rode bicycles. A mail truck stopped across the street. An ordinary day. Inside my house, everything had changed. I turned back toward Richard. So Robert Hayes killed Linda Bennett. Richard nodded slowly. And you helped him? He covered his face with both hands. I helped move the car. I stared at him. What? I drove his car away from the scene. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I helped him hide it. My knees suddenly felt weak. You destroyed evidence. I thought I was saving my family. How? He looked up. If Robert went to prison, then what? He said he'd tell investigators about the billing errors. Billing errors. Another new piece of the puzzle. What billing errors? Richard looked exhausted. There were financial mistakes. Mistakes? Some records? What records? Weren't accurate. I folded my arms. Stop using words that hide the truth. He closed his eyes again. We falsified billing records. The room became completely silent. Who is we? Robert and I. For money. At first, no. I frowned. What do you mean? The hospital was struggling. So you changed numbers to protect funding. And then, Richard didn't answer. And then, I repeated, it got bigger. How much bigger? We started moving money. To yourselves. He nodded once. The movement was almost invisible. I felt sick. So Linda discovered it. Yes. And she threatened to report both of you. Yes. Everything suddenly fit together. Not completely, but enough to see the outline. Linda wasn't just in the wrong place. She was dangerous. Dangerous to Richard. Dangerous to Robert. I walked back toward him. So Robert hit Linda. Yes. You helped cover it up. Yes. You stole money. He whispered. Yes. I looked at the man I had loved for most of my life. I don't know who you are anymore. His eyes filled with tears. I'm still the man who loved you. Are you? I've loved you every day. But you lied every day. He didn't argue. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket. He removed an old envelope. The same cream-colored paper I had seen burning in the fireplace. He handed it to me. The woman who came here? Patricia Bennett. He nodded. She's Linda's younger sister. I slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. The first sentence made my chest tighten. Mr. Murphy, I have spent 34 years searching for the truth about my sister. I continued reading. Patricia explained that her mother had died 6 months earlier. While cleaning out her mother's attic, she found a locked wooden box. Inside were old photographs, letters, and documents Linda had hidden before she died. According to Patricia, the box suggested Linda had been investigating financial fraud at the hospital. She believed Richard Murphy knew more about her death than anyone admitted. At the bottom of the letter was one sentence underlined twice. "I'm giving you one chance to tell the truth before I do." I lowered the paper. "You tried to burn this." Richard nodded. "I was afraid." "Of Patricia." "No." "Then what?" "That you'd read it." I looked directly into his eyes. "Is everything you told me true?" He answered without hesitation. "Yes." The speed of his answer bothered me. Too fast, too prepared, almost rehearsed. I thought about Dr. Robert Hayes, dead 12 years, unable to defend himself, unable to deny anything Richard blamed on him. When did Robert die? 12 years ago. Heart attack. So he can't tell his side of the story. Richard stared at me. Neither of us spoke. For several seconds, the only sound in the room came from the old grandfather clock. Tick, tick, tick. Finally, I asked the question that had been growing inside me since he started talking. "If Robert is dead?" Richard looked up. How do I know you're not putting all the blame on a man who can't speak any more?" His face lost every trace of color. For the first time since his confession began, Richard had no answer. I didn't answer Richard. Not right away, because the truth was already shifting again. Just minutes earlier, he had finally confessed something. Now I could feel him adjusting it, softening it, moving the weight somewhere else. A dead man, a perfect place to hide. I folded Patricia Bennett's letter carefully and placed it back into the envelope. Then I looked at Richard. "I'm going to meet her." His head snapped up. "No, that wasn't a question. She's not who you think she is. She's Linda's sister. She's angry. She should be." Richard stood up quickly. "You don't understand what she's capable of." I almost laughed. After everything I had just learned, that sentence sounded absurd. "What she's capable of," I repeated. "Or what you're afraid she knows." His jaw tightened. "You're being manipulated. I'm being lied to. That's not fair." "No," I said quietly. "What's not fair is a woman dying and her family waiting 34 years for the truth." Richard took a step closer. "If you meet her, you're putting this family at risk." I held his gaze. "This family has been at risk for 34 years. He didn't argue. He just stood there, watching me, trying to decide whether I would stop. I didn't. That afternoon, while Richard was in his office, I used the number printed at the bottom of Patricia's letter. My hands were steady when I dialed. That surprised me. The phone rang twice. Then a woman answered. "Hello." Her voice was calm, not angry, not emotional, just tired. "Is this Patricia Bennett?" A short pause. "Yes, my name is Cheryl Murphy." Silence, long enough for me to hear her breathing. "I was wondering when you would call," she said. "You came to my house?" "Yes. I'm sorry I didn't open the door. I didn't expect you to." Her voice didn't carry blame. "Only certainty. I'd like to meet you." Another pause. Then she said, "So would I." We agreed to meet the next morning at a small diner about 20 minutes outside the city. Neutral ground, public, safe. I didn't tell Richard. That night we sat in the same house, ate the same dinner, and slept in the same bed. But something had changed completely. We were no longer a husband and wife sharing a life. We were two people holding different versions of the same truth. and only one of them could survive. The next morning, I left early, before Richard woke up. The drive felt longer than it actually was. Every mile gave me time to think, to replay his words. I wasn't driving. It was Robert. I helped him. Each sentence now felt incomplete, like pieces of a story missing their center. The diner was quiet when I arrived. Only a few customers sat scattered across booths. I recognized Patricia immediately. She sat near the window, the same woman I had seen on my porch. Same coat, same tired eyes. But now, I saw something else. Strength. She stood when I approached. Cheryl, Patricia. We didn't shake hands. We didn't hug. We simply sat down across from each other. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she reached into her bag. She placed the photograph on the table. I had seen it from a distance before. Now I looked at it closely. 3 people stood together at what looked like a hospital holiday party. Linda Bennett, young, smiling, alive. Beside her stood a man I immediately recognized. Richard. He looked younger, of course, but it was him, standing close. Too close to someone he later claimed he barely knew. And on the other side, a man in a white shirt, confident, relaxed, Dr. Robert Hayes. You see him? Patricia said quietly. Yes. You recognize him? Yes. He knew my sister. That's not what he told me. Patricia gave a small, sad smile. He's told a lot of people a lot of things. I didn't argue. Instead, I asked the question that mattered most. What do you know? She leaned back slightly. I know my sister wasn't just a victim of a random accident. My heart tightened. I know she was being followed that night. The word hit me immediately. Followed? Patricia nodded. She called our mother from a gas station about 10 minutes before she died. I felt my fingers grip the edge of the table. What did she say? Patricia didn't look away. She said someone from the hospital was driving behind her. My throat went dry. Did she say who? Patricia held my gaze. She said, Richard Murphy. The world seemed to stop for a moment. That's not what he told me. I didn't think it would be. Patricia reached into her bag again. This time, she pulled out a small digital recorder. My mother recorded her statement before she died. Statement, she wanted someone to remember the truth. Patricia pressed a button. A weak, elderly voice filled the space between us. My daughter called me that night. I froze. She sounded scared, said a man from the hospital wouldn't stop following her. My chest tightened. She said his name, Richard Murphy. The recording ended. Patricia turned it off. That recording is why I came to your house. I couldn't speak for a moment. Richard wasn't just there. He wasn't just helping. He was following Linda. Why I forced myself to ask. Did your sister know him well? Patricia nodded slowly. Yes. How she worked in billing. That's what the articles said. She found something. What? Patricia leaned forward. Fraud. The word landed hard. She found irregular payments. Accounts that didn't match. Money going to places it shouldn't. My mind raced. Richard told me about billing errors. Patricia shook her head. They weren't errors. What were they? They were intentional. My stomach twisted. Did she confront him? Yes. When a few days before she died, everything started connecting. Too quickly, too clearly, she was going to report him. Patricia nodded. Yes. And then she died. Yes. The simplicity of that sentence felt unbearable. I looked down at the photograph again. Linda's smile. So full of life, so unaware of what was coming. "Why come to me?" I asked quietly. Patricia didn't hesitate. "Because you didn't know." "How can you be sure?" "Because I watched your face through that window." I looked up. "You didn't look like a woman protecting a secret," she said. "You looked like a woman discovering one." Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. "I thought I knew my husband." Patricia's expression softened. "I thought I knew my sister." We sat in silence for a moment. Two women connected by a truth neither of us had chosen. Then Patricia spoke again. "There's more." I looked at her. What she hesitated. "After my mother died, someone tried to break into her house." My heart skipped. What, they didn't take jewelry. They didn't take money. What did they take? Patricia's voice dropped. "They were looking for the recording." A chill ran down my spine. "Did they find it?" "No." "Where was it?" "I had already taken it." I stared at her. "Someone is still trying to hide what happened." "Yes." "And you think that someone is Richard?" Patricia didn't answer. She didn't need to, because deep down I already knew. I thought about everything Richard had told me. I wasn't driving. It was Robert. I helped. Each sentence now felt like a shield, a way to stand close to the truth without ever stepping fully into it. I looked back at Patricia. "Do you believe it was an accident?" She held my gaze. "No." The word settled heavily between us. Not loud, not dramatic, just certain. And for the first time since this began, I realized something that terrified me more than anything else. I wasn't trying to prove my husband was innocent anymore. I was trying to figure out how guilty he really was. When I walked back into my house, Richard was already waiting. He stood in the middle of the living room, arms crossed, as if he had been counting the minutes since I left. "You went to see her?" It wasn't a question. I set my purse down slowly. "Yes." His jaw tightened. "I told you not to, and I told you I would." We stared at each other, two people who once shared everything, now standing on opposite sides of the same truth. "What did she say?" he asked. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I walked past him into the kitchen. I needed space, distance, a few seconds to organize what I had just learned. He followed me. Of course he did. He always followed. "She told me Linda was being followed that night," I said finally. Silence. Then I added, "She said it was you." Richard's breathing changed. Subtle, but I heard it. "That's not true." His answer came too quickly, too sharp. "She has a recording," I said. That stopped him. A real reaction this time, not rehearsed. "What recording?" Her mother's voice. "Linda called her the night she died." I watched his face carefully. "She said your name." Richard turned away. "That doesn't prove anything. It proves you were following her." "I wasn't." "You just admitted you were on that road?" "That's not the same thing." "Then explain the difference." He didn't. Instead, he ran his hand through his hair. "You don't understand what's happening." "No," I said quietly. "I'm starting to understand exactly what's happening." His eyes snapped back to mine. "You think I killed her?" I didn't answer. Not right away, because the truth was, I didn't know. Not completely. But I no longer believed his version either. "I think you're still lying," I said. That hurt him. I could see it. But not in the way it used to. Not like a husband wounded by his wife's doubt. Like a man afraid of being exposed. "I told you the truth. You told me part of it. That's all there is." "No," I said. That's all you're willing to admit. He stepped closer. So now you believe her. A stranger who shows up at our door after 34 years. She didn't just show up. Yes, she did. She brought evidence, and I didn't. I looked at him. You brought a story. That sentence landed harder than I expected. He didn't respond immediately. Then he said something that changed the entire direction of the conversation. You're not safe with her. I frowned. What does that mean, she's desperate? So am I. She'll say anything to get what she wants. What does she want you? That surprised me. Why would she want me? Because you're the only person who can destroy me. I stared at him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said, I'm not the one who did that. He flinched. The truth had finally entered the room, and neither of us could push it back out. I made mistakes, he said quietly. Mistakes, I repeated. You're calling it that again. I was trying to protect our family. You keep saying that. Because it's true. From what I asked. From losing money. From losing your reputation. From losing everything. I shook my head. You didn't protect us, Richard. You built our lives on something rotten. His voice rose slightly. I built a life for you. No, I said firmly. You built a lie for me. The room went silent again. Heavy, unavoidable. Then he did something I didn't expect. He reached into his pocket. Again. Another envelope. Different from Patricia's. This one was thicker, older. He placed it on the table. What's this, I asked. Proof. Of what? That I'm telling the truth. I hesitated. Then I opened it. Inside were old documents, hospital records, financial reports, names I didn't recognize, numbers that didn't make sense. But one thing stood out immediately. Signatures, Richards, and another name, Robert Hayes. I flipped through the pages. These are billing records. Yes, they're falsified. Yes, you kept these, I had to. Why, in case something like this happened? I looked at him. So, you've been preparing for this day? No, he said quickly. I've been afraid of it. There was a difference, but not enough to comfort me. I held up one page. How much money are we talking about? He hesitated. Thousands. Thousands, I repeated. Or more, he didn't answer. That's not something you forget, Richard. He finally said, hundreds of thousands. The number hung in the air. Heavy, ugly, real. And Linda found this, poured it. Yes. And you followed her that night? No. Then why did she say your name? I don't know. Stop saying that. I don't. You always know, I said. You always have an answer. Except when the truth gets too close. He slammed his hand on the table. I didn't kill her. The sound echoed through the house. For a moment, we both froze. Then he stepped back, as if he had crossed a line. I took a slow breath. I didn't say you did, but you think it. I think you're hiding something worse than what you've told me. His eyes softened, just slightly. What could be worse than what I've already admitted? I held his gaze. The part where she didn't die immediately. He didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. That silence. That one moment told me everything. She was alive, I whispered. Richard closed his eyes. I don't know. Yes, you do. I couldn't tell. You moved her. I told you. You moved her. I repeated louder now. Why would you move someone if they were already dead? He didn't answer. Did she speak to you? No. Did she try to stand? No. Did she ask for help? No. Every answer came faster now, too fast, too defensive. I stepped closer. Richard. He opened his eyes, and for the first time since this began, I saw it. Not fear, not guilt, something deeper. Shame. She was alive, wasn't she? I asked quietly. He looked at me, really looked at me, like a man standing at the edge of something he could never come back from. Then he whispered, I don't remember. That was the worst answer of all, because it wasn't a denial, it was an escape, and I realized something in that moment that changed everything. Richard wasn't just hiding the truth from me. He had been hiding it from himself for 34 years. And now, it was starting to come back, piece by piece, whether he wanted it to or not. I stepped back. I can't stay here. His head snapped up. What I need, time. Cheryl, I need space to think. You're overreacting. No, I said calmly. I'm finally reacting. He moved toward me. Don't leave. I picked up my purse. I'm not leaving forever. Where will you go? I hesitated. Then I said, Allison's. His face changed again. No, it's not your decision. You can't tell her. I haven't decided what I'm going to tell her. You'll destroy her. I paused at the door. Then I turned back. She deserves to know who her father really is. His voice broke. I am still her father. Yes, I said softly. But I don't know if you were ever the man she believed you were. I opened the door. Cold air rushed in. And for the first time in 41 years, I walked out of my home, not as a wife, but as a woman searching for the truth. Allison didn't expect me that early. When she opened the door, she was still in her robe, her hair pulled into a loose bun, coffee mug in hand. Mom? I forced a small smile. Can I come in? Her expression changed instantly. Of course. She stepped aside. Ryan's backpack sat by the door. He was probably getting ready for school. The smell of toast filled the kitchen. Everything felt normal. Too normal. That made it harder. Allison watched me closely as I walked inside. What's wrong? I placed my purse on the counter. I needed to get out of the house. Did you and Dad fight? I hesitated. Then I said, yes. That wasn't a lie. It just wasn't the whole truth. Allison sighed. Mom, you know how he gets. He hates conflict. I almost laughed. If only she knew. He's not who you think he is, I said quietly. Allison frowned. What does that mean? Before I could answer, Ryan walked into the kitchen. Hey, Grandma. Hey, sweetheart. He grabbed a piece of toast and glanced between us. You okay? I'm fine. Teenagers always know when something isn't fine. Ryan didn't push it. He just nodded and left for school. The front door closed. Silence filled the kitchen. Allison turned back to me. Okay, she said. Tell me what's going on. I sat down slowly. My hands rested on the table. For a moment, I didn't know where to begin. How do you explain to your daughter that the man who raised her might be responsible for something terrible? How do you say that without breaking her? I found something, I said. What kind of something? A newspaper article. Allison leaned back slightly. That's not exactly shocking. It was about a woman named Linda Bennett. Allison shook her head. I've never heard of her. She died in a hit-and-run 34 years ago. So I swallowed. It happened on the same road your father told me he proposed to me. Allison went still. That's weird. It gets worse. I reached into my purse and pulled out the copies from the archive. I placed them on the table. She picked them up slowly. Her eyes moved across the page, then back to me. Why do you have this? Because your father had one just like it. Her expression changed again. Confusion turned into concern. Why would Dad keep something like this? That's what I asked him. And he said it was related to an old hospital case. Allison nodded slightly. That makes sense. He worked there. No, I said, it doesn't. She frowned. What are you saying? I took a breath. He was there that night. The words hung in the air, heavy, impossible. Allison stared at me. No, he admitted it. No, Mom. He said he was on that road. That doesn't mean he also said he helped cover it up. Silence. Complete silence. Allison's face drained of color. What? He said a doctor he worked with? Robert Hayes was driving. And Dad helped him? Yes. Allison stood up. No, that's not true. He told me himself. He must have been confused. Allison, he would never, he already did. She shook her head. No. Her voice broke. My dad wouldn't do something like that. I stood up slowly. He already admitted it. He admitted helping, she said quickly. Not killing anyone? I didn't respond, because I couldn't lie to her. Not anymore. He followed her? I said quietly. Allison froze. What she called her mother before she died. She said your father was following her. That's not, she said his name. Allison's breathing became uneven. Who told you that, her sister? She tracked you down? She came to the house. And you just believe her? She has evidence. What kind of evidence? A recording. Allison sat back down. Her hands trembled slightly. This is insane. I know. No, I mean it, she said louder now. This is insane. There has to be an explanation. I'm trying to find one. And what she snapped. You think Dad just killed someone and went on with his life like nothing happened? I didn't answer, because that was exactly what I was beginning to believe. Allison covered her mouth. Tears filled her eyes. I know. No, you don't, she said. You don't know what it's like to hear this about your father? I felt that. Deeply. You think I know what it's like to hear it about my husband? She looked at me. Really looked at me. For the first time since I walked in. And something shifted. Not belief, not acceptance, but doubt. Small, fragile, but real. Why didn't he tell me, she whispered. Because he didn't want you to know. She shook her head again. He's always been honest with me. I thought about that. Carefully. Are you sure about that? She didn't answer. Instead, she stared at the papers again, reading the same lines over and over, as if they might change, as if the truth might rewrite itself. It didn't. Brandon needs to know, she said suddenly. That surprised me. You think so, has Dad's son? Yes, he deserves to hear this from us, not from someone else. I hesitated. Your father already spoke to him. Allison looked up. What, Brandon knows something, how much I don't know. But you think he knows, yes? Allison stood up again. Anger replaced fear. That's not okay. No, that means he kept this from me. It looks that way. She grabbed her phone. I'm calling him. Wait. She stopped. What, don't accuse him? Not accusing him. Asking him. Allison, Mom, I need to know if my brother has been lying to me too. I understood that. Better than anyone. She dialed. Put the phone on speaker. It rang twice. Then Brandon answered. Hey, Brandon, it's me. Hey, what's up? Her voice tightened. I need to ask you something. Okay, did Dad ever tell you about Linda Bennett? Silence? Not confusion, not surprise. Silence. Allison closed her eyes. Brandon, He stopped. Tried again. I didn't think it mattered. Allison's face crumpled. You knew? I knew part of it. How long? A few months? And you didn't tell me he said it was in the past. He said a lot of things, she snapped. Brandon exhaled slowly. What did Mom tell you, enough? Another pause. Then Brandon said something that changed everything again. He gave me money. My heart skipped. What Allison asked? Dad transferred money to me. How much? About $180,000. The number hit like a shockwave. Why, Allison asked. He said it was an early inheritance, and you believed that I didn't question it. When 3 months ago. Allison looked at me. We both understood what that meant. This wasn't just about the past. It was happening now. Still unfolding. Still being hidden. Brandon? I said, stepping closer to the phone. Yes, Mom. Do you know where that money came from? He hesitated. No. Then we're going to find out. Silence. Then he said quietly, I think we have to. I looked at Allison. She nodded. The truth was, and just breaking our family apart. It was pulling all of us into it. And for the first time, we weren't running from it. We were walking straight toward it. Together. That night, I didn't go back home. I stayed in Allison's guest room, staring at a ceiling that wasn't mine, trying to understand how my entire life had shifted in less than a week. Richard didn't call. Not once. That told me everything. He wasn't trying to fix this anymore. He was trying to contain it. At around 9 p.m., Allison knocked gently on the door. Mom, come in. She stepped inside, slowly holding 2 mugs of tea. I thought you might need this. Thank you. She sat at the edge of the bed. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, I've been thinking about what Brandon said. So have I. $180,000. Yes, that's not a random number. No, that's not a gift. No. She looked at me. That's money being moved. Exactly. I took a slow sip of tea. Your father has been preparing for something. For Patricia, maybe? For the police, maybe? For me, she asked quietly. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. But I suspected something worse. The next morning, Brandon called. This time, not on speaker. Just me. I've been going through the records, he said. What did you find? More transfers. How many over the last 10 years? At least 15 separate payments. My heart tightened. How much total? He exhaled slowly. Roughly $350,000. I closed my eyes. Where did the money go? That's the problem, he said. Some of it went to me. The rest? Where there's a storage company. I sat up straighter. What kind of storage company? Private, off-site, secure units, mostly used for business records. Why would your father pay for that? I don't know. Yes, you do, I said quietly. He didn't argue, because we both knew. Evidence? Do you have the address? I asked. Yes. Send it to me. There was a pause. Mom. What if we go there? We're crossing a line. I looked at the wall, at the soft morning light filtering through the curtains. At this point, I said, I think your father crossed it a long time ago. Another silence. Then Brandon said, I'll meet you there. I hung up. My hands were steady. That surprised me. because inside, everything felt like it was falling apart. By noon, I was in the car with Allison. She insisted on coming. "I'm not letting you do this alone." I wasn't planning to. We drove in silence for most of the trip. The address Brandon sent led us to the edge of an industrial area outside the city. Rows of storage units stretched across the property. Gray, identical, numbered, anonymous. Perfect for hiding something you never wanted found. Brandon was already there when we arrived. He stood beside his car holding a small envelope. "That's the key?" Allison asked. He nodded. "I found it in Dad's office files." Of course he did. We walked together toward Unit B214. Each step felt heavier than the last. I could feel my heartbeat in my chest. Not fast, just loud, like a warning. Brandon unlocked the door. For a moment, none of us moved. Then he lifted it. The metal door rolled upward with a harsh scraping sound. And there it was, the truth, waiting. Boxes filled the unit, stacked carefully, organized, not abandoned, maintained. This wasn't something forgotten. This was something preserved. Brandon stepped inside first, then Allison, then me. I reached for the nearest box, opened it. Inside were old folders, hospital records, billing statements, everything neatly labeled. Mom, Allison whispered. I turned. She was holding something, a license plate, bent, scratched, old. I stepped closer. My breath caught. "It's from Dad's car," she said. I recognized it immediately. Dark blue paint chipped along the edges. The same car. The one he said he sold. He didn't sell it. He hid it. My hands started shaking. "Keep looking," Brandon said. We opened another box. Then another. More records. More documents. Then something different. A smaller container. Wooden. Old. Carefully sealed. Patricia's words echoed in my mind. A box my mother kept. I opened it slowly. Inside, personal items, a purse, a watch, a pair of gloves, and a necklace. Broken. Allison gasped. "These aren't ours." "No," I said quietly. "They're hers. Linda's." Everything went silent. The air felt heavy, as if the room itself understood what we were holding. Then Brandon found something else. A small tape recorder. Old-fashioned. Analog. He held it up. "What is this?" I stepped closer. My heart started racing. "Play it." He hesitated, then pressed the button. At first, only static. Then voices. 2 people. A man and a woman. The woman spoke first. "You can't keep doing this, Richard." My breath stopped. Linda, her voice, alive, clear. "You don't understand," Richard's voice replied. I felt like I couldn't move. "You're stealing from patients," Linda said. "I'm fixing a system that's broken. You're lying. In protecting people, you're protecting yourself." Silence. Then Linda again. "I'm reporting this." "No, you're not. I already made copies." "You don't know what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing." The recording crackled. Then Richard said something that made my entire body go cold. "You have no idea what I'm capable of losing." The tape stopped. No one spoke. No one moved. The truth had just spoken for itself, and it sounded nothing like the story Richard had told me. This wasn't panic. This wasn't confusion. This was control, intent, fear. Not of losing a friend, not of losing a job, of being exposed. I looked at my children, my daughter, my son, both staring at the recorder, both realizing the same thing at the same time. "This wasn't just an accident," Allison whispered. "No," I said, "it wasn't." And then the sound of footsteps behind us. We turned. Richard stood in the doorway, his face pale, his eyes fixed on the recorder in Brandon's hand. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then he said quietly, "You weren't supposed to find that." No one moved. Not me. Not Allison. Not Brandon. Richard stood in the doorway of the storage unit, his eyes locked on the recorder in Brandon's hand. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. Then he took a slow step forward. "You need to turn that off." Brandon didn't move. Why, he asked. Richard's voice hardened. "Because you don't understand what you're hearing." I stepped in front of Brandon slightly. "No," I said. "I think we finally do." Richard looked at me. Really looked at me. And for the first time since this began, he realized something had changed. Completely. "You weren't supposed to find this place," he said. "You shouldn't have kept it," I replied. His jaw tightened. "I kept it because I needed to remember." "All of it?" I asked. "Or just the parts you could live with?" He didn't answer. Instead, he walked further into the unit. His eyes scanned the boxes. The license plate. The personal items. The broken necklace. The truth he had buried for decades. "You've taken everything out of context," he said. "All of it," Allison snapped. Even her voice. Richard turned to her. "Stay out of this." "No," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "I'm already in it." He looked at her like he didn't recognize her anymore. Then back at me. "You shouldn't have brought them." "I didn't bring them," I said. "They came because this is their life too." Richard shook his head slowly. "You're making a mistake." "No," I said quietly. "You made one. 34 years ago. That hit him. I saw it." He exhaled slowly. Then for a brief moment, he stopped fighting. "I never meant for any of this to happen." There it was again. The same line. The same excuse. The same carefully shaped version of regret. Patricia's voice echoed in my mind. "I don't believe it was an accident." Neither did I. "Not anymore." I stepped closer. "Tell me what happened after that recording." Richard hesitated. "You already know." "No," I said. "I know what you told me. I want the rest." "There is no rest." I pointed to the recorder. "That doesn't sound like the whole story." He looked at it, then at me. "You don't understand what pressure does to a person." "Then help me understand." He rubbed his face. Tired, cornered, running out of places to hide. Linda was going to destroy everything he said. She was going to expose the fraud. "Yes, and you followed her?" "Yes." He stopped. Realized what he had just admitted, but it was too late. "You followed her," I repeated. "I just wanted to talk to her." "That's not what she said. She was scared. She had a reason to be." Richard's voice rose slightly. "I wasn't trying to hurt her." "Then why didn't you leave her alone?" Silence. Because he didn't have a good answer. Because there wasn't one. I took another step closer. "What happened on that road?" His breathing grew heavier. "I told you." "No," I cut him off. "You told me a version. That's the truth. That's the part you can live with." He clenched his fists. I hit her. The words dropped heavily into the room. Not Robert, not someone else. Him. Brandon inhaled sharply. Allison covered her mouth. I didn't move, because I had already known. Deep down. "You were driving," I said quietly. Richard nodded once. Yes. The lie was gone. Finally. But the truth wasn't finished? Was it an accident, I asked? Yes. The answer came too fast. Too clean. Too easy. I didn't believe it. Tell me exactly what happened. He looked at the floor. It was snowing. I know. The roads were bad. I know. She got out of her car. Why, I don't know. You were following her. I told you. You followed her. I repeated. He closed his eyes. Yes? Then you know why she got out. Silence. Because he did. She was trying to get away from you, I said. He didn't deny it. She started walking, he said finally. And I drove next to her. Why, to talk to her? To stop her. He didn't answer. She didn't want to talk, I said. No. So what did she do? She kept walking. And then I lost control of the car. I studied his face. You lost control? Or you got too close? His eyes flickered. Just for a second. I lost control. I didn't push that part. Not yet. What happened after you hit her? His voice dropped. She fell. Was she alive? He hesitated again. That hesitation told me everything. She was alive, I said. I don't know. Yes, you do. I couldn't tell. You've had 34 years to remember. His shoulders slumped. I got out of the car, and I went to her. What did she do? He swallowed. She was breathing. The room went completely still. Allison let out a quiet sob. Brandon looked away. And I felt something inside me break. She was alive? I repeated. Yes. Did she speak? He nodded slowly. What did she say? His voice barely came out. She said she was going to the police. I closed my eyes. Even then, even injured, she was still trying to do the right thing. What did you do? I asked. He didn't answer. Richard. I tried to calm her down, how I told her we could fix it, and she didn't believe you. No. So what did you do? Silence. Long. Heavy. Unavoidable. Then he said it. I grabbed her. Allison gasped. Brandon swore under his breath. I didn't react. I needed to hear the rest. She tried to pull away, he continued. And she slipped. Because of you. He didn't deny it. She hit her head. On what, a rock? The word echoed. A rock. So simple, so final. Was she alive after that? He shook his head. No. Did you call for help? No. Why? Because I already knew the answer. He said it anyway. I was afraid. Not of her. Not of her injuries. Of himself. Of being exposed. So you let her die? I said. I didn't. You didn't call for help. I thought she was already gone. You thought wrong. He looked at me desperate now. I didn't mean for it to happen. That doesn't change what you did. Tears filled his eyes. I was trying to protect us. No, I said firmly. You were protecting yourself. The truth had finally been spoken. Fully. Clearly. No more lies. No more versions. Just reality. Richard Murphy didn't just hit Linda Bennett. He made sure she never walked away. And suddenly, everything made sense. The money, the storage unit, the lies, the fear, the doorbell. It wasn't about the past. It was about the truth catching up. And now, it finally had. Richard didn't move. Not when I stepped closer. Not when Allison started crying. Not when Brandon lowered the recorder slowly, as if it had suddenly become too heavy to hold. The truth was out. Not just part of it. All of it. And there was nowhere left for him to hide. I told you everything, Richard said. His voice was quieter now, almost empty. No, I said. You told me what you thought I could survive. He shook his head slowly. I told you what happened. You told me the version where you were still someone I could love. That hit him. I saw it. His shoulders dropped. His eyes closed for just a second. I never stopped loving you, he said. The words hung there. Familiar. Painful. Useless. Love doesn't erase what you did, I replied. Allison turned away, wiping her face. Brandon stepped forward. You moved the body, he said. It wasn't a question. Richard looked at him. Yes. Why? Brandon asked. Richard hesitated. Because I thought it would look like a hit and run. It was a hit and run, Allison snapped. No, I said quietly. It wasn't. They both looked at me. It stopped being that the moment he touched her, I continued. Richard didn't argue, because he couldn't. Did you take her things? Brandon asked. Richard nodded. Yes. Why? I don't know. You do, I said. He looked at me. I panicked. No, I said. You were thinking. He didn't respond. I pointed to the wooden box. You kept them. Yes, for 34 years. Yes. Why? This time he didn't answer immediately, because this wasn't about fear anymore. This was about something deeper, something harder to admit. Finally he said, I couldn't let her disappear. The answer stunned me. What I didn't want her to become nothing. Allison stared at him. You're the reason she almost did. He nodded. I know. You think keeping her things makes that better? No. Then why? He looked down. Because it reminded me of what I did. Silence filled the space again. Heavy, unforgiving. Then Brandon asked the question none of us had spoken yet. Did you ever think about turning yourself in? Richard didn't hesitate. Yes, when many times. Then why didn't you? Richard looked at me. Not Brandon. Not Allison. Me. Because of you. I felt that, like a weight pressing down on my chest. Don't do that, I said quietly. I'm not blaming you. Yes, you are. Am explaining. You're justifying. He shook his head. No. Then what are you doing? I'm telling you the truth. No, I said. You're telling me why you chose yourself. That landed harder than anything else, because it was simple, and it was true. Richard didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He just stood there. A man who had spent decades constructing a version of himself, now watching it collapse. Brick by brick. Do you understand what happens now? Brandon asked. Richard looked at him. Yes. Do you? Yes. You're going to prison. Yes. Allison broke down completely. No. Her voice cracked. No, no, no. I moved toward her, wrapped my arms around her. She shook against me. He is still my dad, she whispered. I know. I don't want to lose him. I closed my eyes, because that was the part that hurt the most. The truth didn't just expose Richard. It destroyed everything connected to him. I'm still here, Richard said softly. Allison pulled away. No, she said, shaking her head. You're not. He flinched. You stopped being here a long time ago. That broke him, completely. I saw it in his face. The realization, the loss, the understanding that this wasn't just about consequences. It was about everything he had already lost without realizing it. "Call the police," Brandon said. Allison looked at him. "What? He needs to turn himself in." "No," she said immediately. "No, we can't just. We don't have a choice." "Yes, we do." "No," Brandon said firmly. "We don't." They looked at me, both of them, waiting. For me to decide, after 41 years of marriage, after everything, the decision still came to me. I looked at Richard, the man I had loved, the man I had trusted, the man I no longer recognized. "You should have told the truth 34 years ago," I said. "I know, but you didn't. I know." And now, I took a slow breath. "It's not yours to control anymore." He nodded, slowly, accepting it. Finally. "Okay," he said. Brandon stepped outside to make the call. Allison sat down on one of the boxes, staring at the floor. I stood in the middle of the storage unit, surrounded by evidence, surrounded by the past, surrounded by everything that had been hidden for so long. Richard walked toward me, not close enough to touch, just close enough to speak. "Did any of it matter?" he asked. The question surprised me. "What our life?" I looked at him. "Everything we built." I didn't answer right away, because the truth wasn't simple, because life isn't simple. Finally, I said, "It mattered to me." His eyes filled with tears. "It mattered to me, too. I believe that." "Then why does it feel like none of it was real?" I took a deep breath. "Because it was built on something that wasn't." He closed his eyes. Pain crossed his face. Not the pain of being caught. The pain of understanding. Do you hate me?" he asked. I thought honestly. No. That surprised him. "I don't hate you," I continued, "but I don't trust you, and I don't think I ever will again." He nodded. "I understand." Footsteps approached. Brandon returned. "They're on their way." No one spoke after that. We just waited, together, for the end of one life and the beginning of something none of us were ready for. We didn't have to wait long. The sound of sirens came first, distant at first, then closer, then right outside the storage facility. Allison stiffened beside me. Brandon stood completely still. Richard didn't move at all. He just stood there, like a man who had already accepted where this was going. 2 police cars pulled up. An unmarked vehicle followed behind. Doors opened. Footsteps approached. And just like that, 34 years of silence ended in a matter of seconds. 2 officers stepped into the unit. Behind them, a detective. Middle-aged, calm, observant. He took in the scene quickly. The boxes, the documents, the 4 of us standing there, and Richard, at the center of it all. "Richard Murphy?" the detective asked. Richard nodded. "Yes. Detective Collins." Of course he was. Everything felt too connected. We received information regarding a reopened investigation. Richard didn't argue, didn't resist, didn't even hesitate. "I know why you're here," he said. The detective studied him. "Do you?" "Yes." A pause. Then the detective stepped forward. "We're going to need you to come with us?" Allison grabbed my arm, tightly. "No." Her voice trembled. Richard looked at her. For a moment, he wasn't a criminal. He was her father. "I'm sorry," he said softly. That broke her. "I don't want you to go," she whispered. His eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to go either. But you're going." "Yes." Brandon stepped forward. What about the evidence? He asked. The detective glanced around the unit. We'll secure everything. He looked at me. Are you Cheryl Murphy? Yes. You provided the materials. I hesitated for just a second. Then I said, yes. Richard looked at me. Not angry, not betrayed, just tired. I should have done it myself, he said quietly. Yes, I replied. You should have. The officers moved toward him. One placed a hand gently on his arm. Turn around, sir. Richard obeyed. No resistance, no argument. The sound of handcuffs clicking into place echoed louder than anything else in that room. Allison cried harder. Brandon looked away. And I felt something I didn't expect. Relief. Not happiness, not satisfaction. Relief, because the truth was no longer buried. Because the waiting was over. Because the lie had finally ended. Richard turned slightly. Looked at me one last time. I never stopped loving you, he said. I held his gaze. I believe that I answered, and for the first time, that didn't change anything. They led him out, step by step, until he disappeared beyond the storage unit door. The silence that followed felt different. Not heavy, not suffocating, empty, like something had been removed. Something that had been there for a very long time. Allison collapsed into a chair. I don't understand how this happened, she whispered. I sat beside her. Neither do I. Brandon leaned against the wall. This isn't over. No, I said. It's just beginning, and I was right, because the truth doesn't end when it's revealed. It begins. Over the next few days, everything changed. News spread quickly, faster than I expected. Local stations picked up the story first. Then larger outlets. Retired hospital administrator arrested in connection with decades-old death. They didn't say his name at first, but it didn't take long. People talk. Neighbors whisper. Friends choose sides. Allison stopped going to work for 3 days. She couldn't face anyone. Ryan came home early from school one afternoon. They're talking about Grandpa, he said quietly. Allison didn't know what to say. Neither did I. How do you explain something like that to a 16-year-old? You don't. You tell the truth. Slowly, carefully, and hope it doesn't break them. Brandon spent most of his time on the phone. Lawyers, financial advisors, investigators. They're asking about the money, he told me. They will. I gave it back. That's good, but it still looks bad. Yes, I said, it does. He ran his hand through his hair. I should have asked questions. Yes, I didn't want to know the answers. I looked at him. That's how this happens. One choice at a time, one silence at a time, until it becomes something you can't undo. A few days later, I went to see Patricia. She met me outside at a small park. Same calm expression, same steady presence. It's happening, she said. Yes. They reopened the case. Yes. She nodded. No smile, no celebration, just quiet acknowledgement. I waited a long time for this, she said. I know. We walked together for a few minutes. Neither of us rushed to speak. Finally, she said, I don't hate you. I stopped. What I know you didn't know. I didn't. I believe you. Tears filled my eyes. Thank you. She looked ahead. I hated him for a long time. I understand. But hate doesn't change anything. No, I said. It doesn't. She turned to me. But truth does. I nodded. Yes. She reached into her bag. pulled out something small, the necklace, repaired. Delicate, beautiful. She wore this every day, Patricia said. I took it carefully. My hands trembled. She deserves to be remembered for more than what happened to her. Yes, I said softly. She does. Patricia smiled faintly. For the first time in 34 years, she will be. We stood there in silence, two women connected by something neither of us chose, but both of us faced, and for the first time since this began, I felt something shift inside me. Not closure, not yet, but something close. Because the truth, no matter how painful, had finally been heard. The house felt different after Richard was gone. Not quieter, not emptier, just exposed. Like every wall had been holding a secret, and now it had nothing left to hide. I returned home 2 days after his arrest. Alone. The front door creaked the same way it always had. The living room looked exactly the same. The couch, the photographs, the clock ticking steadily on the wall. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything had. I stood there for a long time, just looking around. 41 years of memories lived in that house. Birthdays, Christmas mornings, arguments, laughter, all of it real. All of it built on something I never knew existed. I walked slowly into the kitchen. The same kitchen where Richard had stood just days earlier, pouring coffee like nothing was wrong. The same place where he told me nobody knows the truth. I rested my hands on the counter. Now everyone knew, and that changed more than just him. The phone rang. I let it ring twice before answering. Hello, Mrs. Murphy? Yes, this is Detective Collins. I closed my eyes briefly. Yes. We've processed the evidence from the storage unit. I understand. There's enough to move forward with formal charges. What kind of charges? A pause. Then he said, manslaughter, obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, and multiple counts of financial fraud. Words sounded clinical, clean, nothing like the reality they described. Will there be a trial, I asked? Most likely. And if he pleads guilty, that depends on his attorney. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. There's something else, he added. What we've had additional witnesses come forward. My heart tightened. From the hospital. Yes. What did they say? That there were concerns about billing irregularities years ago, and no one reported it. They were afraid. That didn't surprise me. Fear protects the wrong people more often than the right ones. Thank you, I said quietly. If you remember anything else, please call. I will. I hung up and stood there, alone again. The truth didn't feel like victory. It felt like loss. Later that afternoon, Allison came over. She didn't knock. She just walked in, like she had her whole life. Mom in the kitchen. She joined me. Her eyes were tired, red. How are you holding up? She asked. I'm here. That's not the same thing. No, I said. It's not. She sat down at the table. I talked to Ryan. What did he say? He asked if Grandpa is a bad person. That question cut deeper than anything else. What did you tell him? She hesitated. I told him people can do bad things without being completely bad. I nodded slowly. That's true, but it doesn't make it easier? No, I said. It doesn't. She looked around the kitchen. I don't think I can come here anymore. I understand. It feels wrong. It does. She swallowed. Are you going to sell the house I don't know yet? You should. Maybe. We sat in silence for a moment. Then she said, "He wants to see you." I looked at her. "In jail," I figured. "You don't have to go." "I know. Are you going to?" I didn't answer right away. Because I didn't know. Because I wasn't sure what I would say. Or what I needed to hear. "I think I have to," I said finally. Allison nodded. "Okay." The next day I went. The building was cold, sterile, unforgiving. Nothing like the life we had built together. I sat in the waiting area, hands folded in my lap. Waiting, again. But this time, not for answers. For closure. A guard led me to a small room. A table, 2 chairs. Nothing else. Richard was already there. He looked different. Not older, not weaker. Just stripped of everything that used to define him. He stood when I entered. "Cheryl." I sat down. He sat across from me. For a moment, we just looked at each other.
41 years, reduced to this. "I didn't think you'd come," he said. "I wasn't sure I would. Thank you." I nodded slightly. Silence filled the space. Then he said, "They're offering a plea." I wasn't surprised. What does that mean?
I admit everything. And they avoid a trial. And your sentence? He exhaled slowly. Long enough that I won't come home. The words settled heavily between us. Not dramatic, not shocking, just final. "I deserve that," he added. I didn't argue. Because he did. "I keep thinking about that night," he said. "Why?" "Because I can't change it." "No," I said. "You can't. But I keep replaying it." "What do you see?" He looked at his hands. "I see her standing there, Linda." "Yes. I see the moment before everything changed. And I wonder what would have happened if I had just driven away." I held his gaze. "But you didn't." "No, and that's the part that matters." He nodded slowly. "Yes." Another silence. Different this time. Less tense. More honest. "I almost told you," he said. "When many times. Why didn't you?" He smiled faintly. "You already know why." "Yes," I said. "I do. Fear, pride, self-preservation. All the things that destroy truth." "Did you ever love me?" he asked. The question surprised me. Because it was so simple. So human. "Yes," I said. Past tense. I didn't correct him. Because he wasn't wrong. "I still care about you," I added. "That's not the same thing." "No," I said. "It's not." He nodded. "I understand." We sat there for a few more minutes. Then the guard knocked on the door. Time was up. I stood. So did he. For a moment it felt like we were about to say goodbye. Really say it. For the last time. "Yes." "I'm sorry." I looked at him. Not the man I married. Not the man I thought I knew. Just the man who finally told the truth. "I know," I said. And then I walked out, without looking back. Because some endings don't need one last glance. They need distance. And the strength to keep moving forward. The trial never happened. 3 weeks after his arrest, Richard accepted the plea deal. No courtroom drama. No witnesses on the stand. No cross-examinations. Just a quiet decision and a long list of charges read aloud in a courtroom that felt too small for everything it carried. I sat in the back row, alone. Allison couldn't come. She said she wasn't ready. Brandon came, but he stayed near the door, as if he needed to be able to leave at any moment. Richard stood at the front, in a suit that no longer fit the man wearing it. He looked smaller, not physically, but in every other way. The judge spoke clearly, calmly, without emotion. Richard Murphy. You are charged with manslaughter, obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, and financial fraud. Each word landed like a stone. You have chosen to enter a guilty plea. Richard nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Do you understand the consequences of this plea? Yes. Do you admit to the actions described in these charges? There was a pause. Just long enough for everyone in the room to feel it. Then Richard said, yes, that was it. 34 years of lies reduced to one word. The judge continued. You are hereby sentenced to a term that will result in your incarceration for the remainder of your natural life. No gasps, no reactions, just silence. Because everyone already knew. Richard didn't react either. He just stood there, accepting it. Like he had been waiting for this moment for decades. As the hearing ended, he turned slightly. Our eyes met. Not for long, just a second. But in that second, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Peace. Not happiness, not relief. Something quieter. Something final. The truth had taken everything from him, but it had also taken the weight he had been carrying. And in some strange way, that mattered. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered. Cameras, microphones, questions shouted from every direction. Mrs. Murphy, do you have a statement? I didn't stop, didn't answer, didn't look back, because there was nothing left to say. Everything that mattered had already been said. Over the next few weeks, more details came out. Former hospital employees spoke up. Some anonymously, some publicly. Stories about Richard, about pressure, about altered records, about fear. One nurse said, we knew something was wrong, but we were afraid to lose our jobs. Another said, he made it seem like everything was under control. That sounded familiar. That was the man I had lived with. Calm, controlled, always in charge, until he wasn't. Brandon called me one evening. They're auditing everything he said. The accounts, yes, and they found more. How much he hesitated, enough to prove it wasn't just a mistake. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I'm cooperating, he added. That's the right thing to do. I know. A pause. Mom? Sorry. For what? For not asking questions sooner. I thought about that. Carefully. You're not the only one, I said. We all had moments where we could have looked closer. Where we could have asked more. Where we could have refused to accept easy answers. But we didn't. And that's how things like this survive. Allison took longer to adjust. She stopped by less often. Not because she didn't care, because everything reminded her. One afternoon, she came over unexpectedly. I went back to work, she said. How was it hard? I can imagine. She sat down. I had to tell Ryan everything. My heart tightened. How did he take it? He didn't say much. That's normal. He asked if he could still love his grandfather. I looked at her. What did you say? She took a deep breath. I told him love doesn't disappear just because the truth shows up. I nodded slowly. That's a good answer. It didn't feel like one. Sometimes the right answers don't. She looked around the house. I think you should sell it. I smiled faintly. I've been thinking the same thing. It's not home anymore. No, I said. It's not. A few days later, I listed the house. 41 years of life packed into boxes, photographs wrapped in paper, memories placed carefully into storage. The same way Richard had stored his truth. Only this time, there were no secrets, just endings, and the possibility of something new. Before I left for the last time, I stood in the doorway. The same place where I had once welcomed friends, family, neighbors. The same place where that woman had stood holding a photograph. Waiting, patient, certain. I finally understood what she had felt. Not anger, not revenge. Certainty. The truth doesn't need to rush. It just waits until you're ready to hear it. I closed the door behind me, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was leaving something behind. I felt like I was stepping out of it. A year later, my life looked nothing like it used to, and yet, for the first time in a long time, it felt real. I didn't keep the house. I sold it 3 months after the trial. Packed everything I wanted to remember. Left behind everything I did. I moved into a smaller home just 10 minutes from Allison. Closer to her, closer to Ryan, closer to a life that wasn't built on someone else's secret. The first few weeks were the hardest. Silence followed me everywhere. No familiar routines. No shared habits. No Richard. Just me and the truth. But slowly, something changed. Not all at once, not dramatically, just small things. I started waking up without that tight feeling in my chest. I started drinking coffee without wondering what I didn't know. I started breathing again. Allison visited often, more than before, not out of obligation, out of something deeper. Connection, honesty. "Do you ever think about him?" she asked me one afternoon. We were sitting on the porch. Ryan was inside working on a school project. "Yes," I said. "Every day, no." She nodded slowly. "I do. That's normal. I don't know what to feel anymore. You don't have to decide right now. I still love him. I know. But I hate what he did. That's allowed too." She looked at me. "How do you live with both?" I smiled faintly. "You don't choose one. You carry both until one gets lighter." She didn't answer, but I could see she understood. In her own way. Brandon changed too. Not immediately, not easily, but genuinely. He started therapy. He told me that himself. "I needed to understand why I didn't ask questions," he said. "What did you figure out?" "I didn't want to see anything that would change how I saw him." "That's human. It's also dangerous." "Yes," I said. "It is." He visited more often. Not just for me, for Allison, for Ryan, for himself. Trying to rebuild something that had been cracked, but not completely broken. Ryan surprised me the most. One afternoon, he showed me something on his laptop. "I made this," he said. "What is it?" "A website." "For what?" He hesitated, then turned the screen toward me. It was simple, clean, respectful. At the top it said, "In memory of Linda Bennett." My breath caught. "What is this?" I asked softly. "She shouldn't just be a story about what happened to her," he said. "She should be remembered for who she was." I looked through it. Photos, articles, a timeline, a life, not just a death. "You did this yourself." He nodded. "I used what you and Mom told me. And what I found online." I closed the laptop gently. "That matters," I said. He shrugged slightly. It just felt right. It did. More than he probably realized. Richard wrote to me. At first every week, then every few weeks, then less often. I kept the first letter. I never opened the others. Not because I didn't care, but because I already knew what they would say. Apologies, memories, regret, and some things you don't need to read to understand. I visited him once, 6 months after the trial. Not for him, for me. He looked older, thinner, but calmer. "I didn't expect to see you again," he said. "I didn't expect to come." We sat across from each other, different from the first visit. Less tension, more acceptance. I think about that night every day, he said. I know. I wish I could change it. I know. I can't. No, I said. You can't. We didn't talk about the details. We didn't need to. We both knew them too well. Are you happy? He asked. The question surprised me. Yes, I said. Really? Yes. He nodded slowly. I'm glad. I believed him. And that was enough. When I left, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness. I felt something simpler. Closure. A few weeks later, Patricia called me. They're placing a memorial, she said. For Linda. Where near the road? Mill Creek Road. Of course. Will you come? She asked. I didn't hesitate. Yes. The day was quiet, cold, but not harsh. Patricia stood beside the small bench. Simple, elegant, a plaque engraved with Linda's name, her dates, and one sentence. The truth was worth telling. I stood beside Patricia. We didn't speak for a while. We didn't need to. Finally, she said, I used to think this day would feel different. How like justice would fix everything. Does it? She shook her head. No. What does it feel like? She looked at the bench, like she's finally not alone anymore. I nodded. Yes. I reached into my bag, pulled out something small, the necklace. Restored, carefully repaired. I handed it to her. She should have it, I said. Patricia took it gently. Thank you. We stood there a little longer, two women, connected by a story neither of us chose, but both of us faced. As I walked back to my car, I looked once more at the road, at the place where everything had changed, for Linda, for Richard, for me, and I realized something. That final doorbell. The one Richard feared so much, it didn't destroy my life. It revealed it. It broke something false. So something real could finally exist. At 68 years old, I started over. Not because I wanted to, because I had to. And for the first time, that felt like freedom. If there's one thing this story taught me, it's this: loyalty and silence are not the same thing. For most of my life, I believed being a good wife meant standing by my husband no matter what. I believed love meant protecting each other even from the truth. But I was wrong, because there's a line between loyalty and complicity. And once that line is crossed, silence doesn't protect anyone, it only extends the damage. Richard didn't just make one terrible decision 34 years ago. He made it again. Every single day, he chose not to tell the truth. Every year that passed didn't erase what happened. It buried it deeper. And I was living on top of that burial ground without even knowing it. What I learned is this: time does not heal what truth refuses to face. You can build a life, raise children, create memories, but if the foundation is cracked, it will eventually break. Maybe not loudly, maybe not all at once, but it will. And when it does, you're left with a choice. You can protect the illusion, or you can face the truth. I chose the truth. Not because it was easy, not because it made me stronger, but because it was the only way to live with myself. Starting over at my age wasn't something I ever planned, but it also wasn't the end of my life. It was the first honest chapter of it. And maybe that's the message I want to leave you with. It is never too late to choose truth over comfort. It is never too late to rebuild your life with dignity. And it is never too late to walk away from something that asks you to betray your own conscience. If you've made it this far, I'd really like to hear from you.
What would you have done if you were in my place? Would you have opened that door or kept it closed? Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone you love and telling the truth? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story stayed with you, if it made you think or feel something real, please like the video and subscribe. Also, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. Because sometimes the truth we're afraid of the most is the one someone else needs to hear.